He had caught a glimpse into Detroit's vibrant car scene on YouTube and in magazines, but it wasn't until he was actually living in Michigan that he realized that something was just different. The vibe here felt thicker, older, louder. He remembers the first time he went down Woodward Ave during the day. The street was lined with cars parked up and down the avenue, with lawn chairs strewn across strip mall parking lots to catch the road show. It felt like he had stepped into a museum. Old men leaned over carburetors next to kids in hoodies, a Mustang idles like a sleeping animal. Nick in his blacked-out Land Rover Discovery even gets a polite nod from a guy as he rolled by. In every corner, conversation shifted from torque curves to transmission choices as if people were trading baseball cards. He was amazed at the way people loved their cars with the same ritual intensity that he did, and it felt less like a hobby and more like a religion. That reverence made him proud and occasionally painfully self-aware. But it was at night when things really changed. The Woodward that looked like a family museum during the day turned into something out of a myth after dark. Neon lit up the storefronts, and the sound of open headers echoed from across the concrete like a war drum. Cars prowled in packs, Camaros, Mustangs, C6 Corvettes, and the occasional GTR or Supra. Every stoplight was a starting line, every intersection a stage. Two cars would roll slowly up to the light, engines lopping, building tension, and then a quick rev, a subtle nod, and when the light went green, the tires would scream, smoke, speed, and the blur of headlights tearing into the night. It was chaos and choreography all at once. And it wasn't just the big money builds either. He saw people lose by a fender and laugh about it at the next gas station, trading stories and tuning tips like old friends. There was no judgment here, only respect. And if you lined up, you earned your place. The craziest part for Nick wasn't just the racing, it was the community that formed in the shadows. He thought he understood car culture. Michigan at night showed him something else entirely. This wasn't just about the cars. It was about belonging to a heartbeat that pulsed through the pavement louder than any exhaust note. Detroit by day had humbled him. Detroit by night left him addicted. Welcome to the Throttle Culture Podcast, a space where design, history, and emotion meet horsepower. We celebrate the stories behind the builds and the people who see more than just a car. They see a connection. This is the second part of a 3-part series episode, and this chapter is all about taking risks, making mistakes, and a bond between not just car and owner, but also father and son. So let's get into it. It's 2015, and Nick finds himself in Motor City for work, a city that once roared as the beating heartbeat of the automotive world. Around him, gearheads swap stories of glory days and burnt rubber, the ghosts of factories and muscle cars still lingering in the air. For many, this is paradise, an automotive heaven where engines and history intertwine. But for Nick, something was missing. Despite the noise, despite the culture, there was an emptiness in him, a hollow space that no burnout or late-night cruise could fill. He felt incomplete, restless, almost haunted by the thought of what he had left behind. And there was only one cure for this loneliness, only one thing that could bring him back to life: his yellow beauty, his beloved rotten banana, the Honda S2000. No ordinary S2K either. No, this one had been patiently waiting for him in New York, fitted over the years with the screaming SOS Stage 2 supercharger and tuned with an AEM EMS, ready to roar like never before. And so Nick boards a plane, not just to pick up a car, but to reclaim a part of him that Detroit, even for all its horsepower and history, could never replace. Sidebar, a supercharger basically forces more air into an engine cylinder by compressing it, leading to more fuel being burned and thus a bigger, more powerful explosion for increased horsepower and torque. And an AEM EMS is an advanced aftermarket computer that replaces a vehicle's factory engine control unit, or an ECU. It gives performance tuners and racing enthusiasts full control over an engine's fuel delivery, ignition timing, and other functions, allowing for high-level customization. Anyways, back to the story. So Nick lands in New York, bag slung over his shoulder, and walks straight into his dad's shop where the pride and joy has been waiting for him, the yellow S2000. Freshly armed with the Stage 2 SOS supercharger and tuned on an AEM EMS, it's a car that looks as hungry as it sounds. And the mission? Drive it 9 hours back home to Motown, or Detroit, the Motor City. The trip starts smooth, open road ahead, the hum of the supercharger singing in the background. But after hours on the highway, Nick starts feeling that itch, the kind of impatience that only car guys and car girls know. Curiosity kicks in, he reaches into his bag, pulls out his laptop, and plugs into the EMS. Let's see what this baby can really do, he thinks. 1 fourth gear pull in Pennsylvania, and boom, the car comes alive. 16 pounds of boost felt smooth and effortless, like it was begging for more. Nick's grinning ear to ear. He does it again, another pull, then another. And then temptation whispers, a little more timing won't hurt, he thinks. By the way, do not try this at home. Road tuning at highway speeds is dangerous. Always dyno tune with a professional in a controlled environment. So back on the highway, Nick drops the hammer. First, second, third, and fourth, the revs are climbing, 7,000, 8,000, pulling harder and harder, and then suddenly, disaster. From 8,500 RPM straight down to silence, the only sound left is the hollow clunk of metal knocking under the hood. Nick's cooked. He kills the ignition, coasts onto the shoulder, and rolls off to the next exit. And there he is, stranded in the middle of Amish County, horses and carriages clip-clopping past while the bright yellow S2000 sits wounded on the side of the road. Nick is 300 miles from his home in Michigan and 300 miles from his parents back in New York. He pops the hood, pulls the plugs one by one, and there it is, cylinder 4 completely wiped out. Shit, Nick mutters under his breath, there goes the motor. Sometimes the fastest way home isn't horsepower, it's a phone call, and the next best thing, dialing his dad and asking for a tow. Nick sat on the side of the road for 5 long hours, stranded in the middle of nowhere, his body cramped and his mind racing. The questions wouldn't stop. Should he rebuild? Should he just sell the car and start fresh? How much would it even cost to fix this mess? When his father finally arrives, the scolding started immediately. What did you do? Crank it over. As the engine reluctantly turned, a smile spread across his dad's face. He knew Nick had really done it this time, and he knew exactly how much work was waiting for him ahead. Because Nick had to be back at work the next day, his mom had followed behind in her car. She handed him the keys, and Nick drove back to Michigan while his parents hauled the wounded S2000 back to New York. A week later, his dad FaceTimes him. Want to see the damage? He doesn't hesitate. The screen lights up with the grim reality. The spark plug had melted, dropping its electrode straight into the cylinder. And at 9,000 RPM, the result of that was catastrophic, shredded metal and a destroyed motor. There was only one path forward, rebuild. Over the following weeks, Nick began ordering parts, a new cylinder head, super tech valves, springs and retainers, dart and sleeves, Carrillo rods, and CP pistons. Piece by piece, the resurrection of the yellow S2000 was set in motion. And so here's a quick breakdown of all these mods. Super tech valves, springs, and retainers, these upgrade the engine's valve train, allowing it to handle higher RPMs and more power reliably. Dart and sleeves, these strengthen the engine block, making it more durable for high-performance builds. Carrillo rods, strong connecting rods that can handle more stress from increased horsepower. CB pistons are basically high-performance pistons designed for strength and efficiency under high pressure and heat. Overall, these parts make the engine stronger, more reliable, and capable of handling much more power. So Nick's father is the embodiment of the Brazilian spirit, stoic and determined, but with the spark of mischief that always seems to surface at the most unexpected moments. His face is carved with the seriousness of years spent managing both family and business. But time never quite hid the twinkle in his eyes, a reminder that behind the gravity, he's the kind of man who could switch from intense focus to teasing you with the well-timed quip in an instant. And Nick grew up in a house where the soundtrack was the hum of engines and the voices of Formula One commentators spilling from the television on Sunday mornings. While other kids wake up to cartoons, Nick wakes up to the roar of V10s, the kind of sound that rattles through the walls and shakes the floorboards. He remembers sitting cross-legged on the living room carpet, eyes wide, watching Ayrton Senna thread a Lotus through the rain in Monaco like a man possessed. There was something electric about those races, the way Senna seemed to bend physics to his will, fearless yet graceful, driving not just with skill, but with soul. For Nick, those races aren't just entertainment, they're lessons. Every time Senna fights through the grid or risks it all in a daring overtake, Nick feels the spark of possibility. Formula One becomes more than a sport. It's a window into greatness, discipline, and obsession. And in the garage, the lessons continue. His father, already a successful mechanic, specializes in Lotus and other track-bred machines, the kind of cars designed to live on the edge. Nick grows up surrounded by the smell of oil and rubber, the metallic symphony of ratchets and torque wrenches clicking in rhythm. He watches his dad build engines with the same calm precision Senna brings to the cockpit, explaining in few words, but teaching volumes. To young Nick, Formula One and his father's mechanic shop aren't two separate worlds, they're one. Senna shows him what's possible on the track, and his father shows him how to make the machines capable of reaching it. Together, they plant the seeds of a lifelong obsession with speed, risk, and the pursuit of perfection. And his father didn't need to say much to convey his disappointment, but when he did speak, the lecture always feels like a carefully constructed masterclass in mechanics, life, and the kind of humility that only comes when you've seen your son fall and rise again. But when the work was done, there was that unforgettable smile, a rare thing, but one that speaks volumes, signaling the pride of a job well done, even if that job had started with a catastrophic failure. All right, gearheads, that's a wrap on this chapter of Throttle Culture, but don't get too comfortable. The next and final part of the series is coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. We're diving deeper into the saga of Rotten Banana, a car that survived more disasters than a Hollywood stunt double and somehow keeps coming back for more, rebuilt and ready to roar. If you love the ride today, hit us up on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for extra content, behind-the-scenes chaos, and maybe a few car confessions. And hey, share this episode with your crew because nothing fuels a conversation like stories of speed, smoke, and sheer stubbornness. Thanks for keeping the throttle wide open. Until next time, stay fast, stay curious, and maybe don't try this at home.